Across the major capital cities of Europe, a quiet revolution is currently transforming the wealthy elite, completely replacing the outdated era of loud luxury with an unyielding commitment to underconsumption. You might feel this exhaustion yourself every single day, trapped in a relentless race where you work tirelessly, yet your account balance remains stubbornly stagnant. It is highly likely you are questioning why true financial security feels like an unattainable luxury, despite your constant sacrifices and hard labor. This analysis is not designed for the easily distracted masses, but rather serves as a definitive blueprint to decode the hidden mechanics of modern capitalism, allowing you to master your own financial currents. By securing your attention until the absolute end of this broadcast, you will acquire a sharp economic lens that promises to permanently dismantle the illusions of debt, unlocking the path to genuine, lasting affluence. Picture a routine Tuesday afternoon at a highly congested urban intersection. In the left lane idles a pristine, blacked-out luxury vehicle, sporting brand-new dealer plates that demand immediate attention from every onlooker. Right next to it sits a 10-year-old economy car, complete with a minor bumper dent and a faded coffee cup resting on the dashboard. Society has systematically conditioned your brain to instantly label the luxury driver as wealthy, without a single second of hesitation. Yet, in this year of 2026, statistical realities dictate that the driver in the pristine vehicle is likely drowning in severe liabilities, while the individual in the dented vehicle holds the true keys to absolute freedom. This striking paradox exposes the structural illusion that defines the modern consumer economy. The genuinely wealthy have long understood that looking poor on purpose is one of the most potent financial weapons an individual can deploy. While predatory marketing campaigns manipulate the masses into chasing glittering status symbols, the quiet elite go out of their way to appear completely ordinary. To dismantle this systemic trap, one must look directly at the sobering data hidden beneath the surface of daily transactions. Entering the year of 2026, official economic reports indicate that roughly 60% of the population survives entirely from paycheck to paycheck. While that broad metric is deeply concerning, the underlying details are what should freeze your ambition completely. Approximately 40% of individuals earning over $100,000 a year are also trapped in this identical monthly cycle. 2 out of every 5 high earners, the precise individuals society assumes have conquered the financial game, conclude each month with absolutely nothing left over. The typical household now requires roughly $6,500 every single month just to cover basic survival expenses. This baseline requirement aggregates to $78,000 annually before a single luxury item is even considered. Meanwhile, the personal savings rate has plummeted to a mere 4.5% in early 2026. Modern consumers are retaining less than half the capital of previous generations, choosing instead to sacrifice their futures for temporary aesthetic validation. More than half of all working adults openly admit they cannot cover an unexpected $1,000 emergency using their liquid savings. Over 25% of the population reports having no financial cushion whatsoever, marking the highest vulnerability index ever recorded in modern history. The median emergency balance for a standard household hovers around a fragile $600. This is the grim reality operating directly beneath the polished car payments and curated weekend photographs that dominate your social feeds. This financial strain is no longer a voluntary choice driven by reckless overspending on luxury items. Over the past 24 months, the segment of the population struggling due to pure economic necessity has completely overtaken those who splurge by choice. People are fundamentally stretched because the cost of basic existence now consumes almost the entirety of their capital. Therefore, the next time you experience a flicker of envy toward a shiny luxury vehicle, remember that the owner is likely one missed paycheck away from total ruin. Human psychology is evolutionarily wired to read status signals as a mechanism for survival and tribal alignment. In the modern era, these ancient survival instincts have been systematically hijacked by luxury corporations selling watches, logos, and precisely angled vacation photos. You are never truly purchasing the physical object itself, but rather buying a specific sentence you desperately hope strangers will utter about your life. The tragedy of this performance is that your intended audience is far too distracted by their own expensive costumes to ever notice yours. Economists refer to this endless cycle of consumption as the hedonic treadmill. You acquire a superior vehicle, experience an emotional lift for a few weeks, and then that luxury quietly morphs into your new baseline reality. The initial excitement evaporates, forcing you to seek the next expensive upgrade simply to recreate the original spark. This treadmill accelerates violently as your income climbs, engineered as a silent killer known as lifestyle inflation. A single luxury purchase quietly mandates a dozen subsequent upgrades to maintain aesthetic equilibrium. Buying one premium piece of furniture instantly renders the rest of your living room shabby, forcing the replacement of the sofa, the carpets, and the curtains. This dangerous cascade operates on an even grander scale when you migrate to a more affluent zip code. The unspoken expectations of the new neighborhood regarding vehicles, schools, and renovations arrive entirely uninvited, trapping your cash flow permanently. Let us examine the brutal mathematical reality behind these superficial status symbols. By the conclusion of 2025, the average price paid for a new vehicle reached an unprecedented $50,000. The average monthly obligation climbed to an all-time high of nearly $770, forcing buyers to extend loans beyond 6 or 7 years. New automotive loans now frequently carry a monthly demand exceeding $1,000, mostly for ordinary family vehicles driven by people desperate to look successful. A new vehicle routinely sheds 20% of its total value during the first 12 months of ownership. By signing a prolonged multi-year loan, the buyer ensures they will remain trapped underwater, paying high interest on value that has already evaporated into thin air. If an unexpected crisis occurs, the debt does not politely shrink to match the market reality of the machine. Collectively, consumers now owe over $1.67 trillion in automotive debt, turning a basic tool of transportation into a financial anchor dragging households under. Consider the alternative calculation that the marketing industry desperately hopes you never perform. If you choose to drive a modest, paid-off vehicle and route that identical $750 a month into a low-cost index fund, the math transforms completely. Compounding at a historic 7% annual return after inflation, that single habit yields over $100,000 in 10 years. If maintained for 30 years, that account expands to over $900,000, proving that the true choice was always a temporary flash of luxury versus $1 million of real security. For a 25-year-old professional, this divergence is not a matter of petty cash, but a profound divide between freedom and servitude. One path finances an impressive illusion today, ensuring decades of mandatory cubicle labor to service the debt. The other path embraces a boring, reliable vehicle, allowing the compounding engine to secure an early retirement by their early 50s. The luxury vehicle did not merely cost a monthly payment, it actively confiscated 10 years of that individual's future life. This identical destructive logic governs the largest purchase most individuals ever make, the residential home. Buying more square footage than survival creates a massive ecosystem of recurring invisible expenses. A larger property demands higher taxes, inflated insurance premiums, increased utility costs, and the psychological pressure to fill empty space with expensive items. The genuinely wealthy execute this calculation before committing, choosing modest primary residences that allow their capital to remain deployed in wealth-generating assets. The bill for maintaining a prosperous public image does not wait decades to arrive. It extracts its tribute every single month with punishing interest. Consumers entered 2026 carrying over $1.25 trillion in revolving credit card debt. With average interest rates hovering near a brutal 21%, financing a lifestyle on plastic is an act of economic self-sabotage. Total household debt has crossed $18.8 trillion, driven largely by the ongoing rental cost of an expensive costume designed to fool complete strangers. To find the true dividing line of economic power, one must look past loud incomes and focus entirely on invisible net worth. In the modern landscape, the median household net worth sits at a modest $192,000, far below what the luxury assets in your neighborhood imply. For demographics under 35, the median net worth plummets to roughly $39,000. Your savings rate predicts your ultimate financial destiny far better than your salary ever will, because the size of the faucet matters little if the underlying basin is completely cracked. Once this reality clicks into place, you begin to view your environment through a cold, analytical lens. The estate with the luxury boat and twin trucks is no longer an obvious monument of success, but a highly leveraged entity one bad quarter away from liquidation. Data compiled by automotive researchers confirms that 61% of households earning over $250,000 a year entirely eschew luxury car brands. They drive ordinary, reliable brands like Honda and Toyota, keeping their capital quietly compounding far away from public scrutiny. Extensive studies of self-made millionaires consistently reveal that frugality is not an occasional habit, but a permanent operating system. Nearly 80% of affluent individuals are first-generation wealthy, meaning they constructed their fortunes through systematic discipline rather than inheritance. Furthermore, a staggering 70% of them never averaged a six-figure income during their formative accumulation years. When people finally terminate the wasteful expenditure of trying to look wealthy, they instantly acquire the capital required to actually become wealthy. The actionable playbook of stealth wealth begins by completely decoupling your income from your personal identity. The average consumer treats a corporate promotion as immediate permission to upgrade their entire existence, viewing the old life as an embarrassment. The quietly wealthy interrupt this psychological reflex entirely, maintaining a stable baseline of consumption while routing 100% of any salary increase into productive investments. A raise is never an invitation to spend, it is a tool to widen the gap between what you earn and what you require to survive. The second strategic directive is to make spending friction-heavy while making saving entirely automatic. Relying on sheer willpower is a failed strategy because human discipline collapses under the weight of exhaustion, stress, and midnight scrolling. The wealthy architect their digital environment by scheduling automated investment transfers on the exact day their compensation lands. By moving the capital before it ever enters the checking account, they eliminate the temptation entirely, forcing themselves to adapt to a smaller, deliberate operational budget. This sequence reverses the catastrophic formula practiced by the broke majority. The average individual earns, spends on immediate desires, and vainly hopes to save whatever fragments remain at the end of the month. The elite pay themselves first, treating their investment accounts as an immutable, non-negotiable tax on their current income. Because the contribution occurs seamlessly in the background, they continue acquiring assets through market downturns and global crises alike, entirely insulated from the hysterical narratives of the daily news cycle. The third tactical maneuver is to extract maximum functional utility from every single asset you own. The fastest method to hemorrhage wealth is replacing items that perform their duties perfectly, simply because a newer iteration enters the marketplace. A smartphone that facilitates clear communication and runs essential applications does not require upgrading merely because a marginal camera improvement is advertised. The quietly wealthy define utility by absolute mechanical function, refusing to retire an asset until it genuinely fails to perform its core task. Millions of dollars dissolve annually in the graveyard of abandoned enthusiasm, where garages are packed with premium gear from short-lived hobbies. The affluent treat any new interest as a hypothesis to be tested at minimal cost, rather than an immediate justification to purchase the entire professional kit. They rent equipment for the initial phase, borrow tools, and validate their long-term commitment before deploying significant capital. If the passion proves to be a passing phase, the financial damage remains completely contained. The absolute cornerstone of lasting financial dominance is defining exactly what enough looks like before the money ever arrives. High earners remain permanently trapped because they allow their material desires to expand infinitely, moving the goalposts with every corporate advancement. Deciding in advance what constitutes a sufficient home, a sufficient vehicle, and a sufficient life allows every subsequent dollar to become an engine of pure wealth creation. The individual who freezes their consumption line while their income curve scales upward achieves financial escape velocity at an exponential rate. All of these tactical moves regarding vehicles, housing, and stealth consumption are completely useless without an underlying financial operating system. You can memorize the advice to spend less, but if you do not deeply comprehend the mechanics of compounding and asset allocation, your strategy will shatter during the first market correction. True financial literacy is the invisible architecture that prevents a strategy from collapsing under social pressure or market volatility. Without it, you are merely mimicking rules you do not understand. leaving you highly vulnerable when life becomes complicated. Return one final time to that urban intersection, observing the luxury vehicle and the dented sedan idling side by side. Your perception of those machines has been permanently altered, allowing you to recognize exactly who is truly free and who is desperately trapped. The master of the financial game realized long ago that the objective is never to look rich, but to secure absolute sovereignty over your time. True freedom is entirely silent, requiring no external validation, no ostentatious logos, and no audience to confirm its majestic power.